South of Midnight, a game made by Compulsion Games, is a single player, linear, narrative driven experience where the core concept of the story is your character Hazel is trying to save your mother. So let's get right into it. Right when you fire up South of Midnight, one of the first things that you'll notice is how gorgeous this game is. Running on my PC at max settings with an OLED display, the HDR is at full effect here with like lots of colors. Everything just pops. South of Midnight to me blew me away with its visuals and its art style. Absolutely fantastic across the board. There was never a moment where I doubted this game's visual prowess. It's definitely one of the best looking games that I've played this year so far. That being said, all of this is accompanied by the great musical score. The music in South of Midnight is absolutely fantastic. In my opinion, it is probably going to be nominated for Best Soundtrack or Best Music at the Game Awards because it was just on point. Every time the music kicked in, it really enhanced the presentation and the mood that they were trying to go with. And of course, being a narrative driven game, the presentation is one thing, but it needs to have a good story. And while the overarching story is rather simplistic, it's the characters within the game that really drive the story. The characters are well thought out and well written, which accompanied by amazing voice cast brings these characters to life and really makes the story exciting. To me, the story was probably the best part about this because of the music, because of the voice acting, because of the fantastic writing. Again, while the overarching story is rather simplistic, the characters themselves have a lot of layers and a lot of depth. And it's really, really an enjoyable experience. Which, of course, brings us to the next elephant in the room, which is the game's core gameplay. Now, South of Midnight's gameplay, I want to start off by saying it is not that it's bad. What the game does, what it tries to do, it does really, really well. The problem is it's very, very simple, very, very basic. To put things into perspective, the combat itself, you have a handful of abilities at your disposal, and you basically have one attack combo, a dash, there is no parry whatsoever, and you gain all your abilities pretty much by chapter 4. And to put things into perspective, the game does have 14 chapters, so you're about 1/3 of the way through, and you have all your abilities with no more progression whatsoever. Even when you look at the game's upgrade tree, most of the upgrades, all it does is just give a buff to the damage. And you don't really notice any changes. There's no progressive change. So when you take the very simple combat and put into the fact that the gameplay loop is very repetitive, really hurts the game itself. So let's talk about that gameplay loop. The gameplay loop basically goes as follows. You go into a chapter. It typically involves you doing a linear exploration of the world while doing platforming. And while this platforming and exploration happens, you get the amazing music, which makes it fun and really bolsters that atmosphere. Eventually, you'll reach a battle area. Then in that battle area, you fight enemies. You'll fight the same enemies pretty much all the way through. So the enemy you see in chapter 4 is the enemy you're going to see at the end of the game. Once you clear the battle area, you rinse and repeat this process until you reach the end of the chapter. Every so often, you will have a chase sequence where you're being chased by a monster and you have to run through the path that involves platforming. Other than that, that's it. That's your gameplay loop pretty much every single chapter all the way through. It just repeats over and over again. So by the time you get to the later chapters of the game, at least to me, began to feel monotonous. It got repetitive. It got annoying. Every so often, you do have a boss battle. Now, the boss battles, I do think the bosses look cool, but again, much like the rest of the gameplay, it's a very simple mechanics. Dodge the boss's attacks, find the opening, attack them, rinse and repeat all the way through. Now the bosses do have different ways of beating them, so it's not like you're repeating the same boss fight over and over again, but just the loop is the same. And Again, it's really a Jekyll and Hyde type of situation here, at least for me, because everything about South of Midnight outside of the combat, I loved. I love the music. I love the art style. I love the graphics. The game's performance. It ran flawlessly on my PC. No bugs, no glitches. Very well optimized. Everything outside of the core gameplay loop, I loved. The gameplay loop itself, at first, for the first 2 or 3 chapters, I enjoyed it. But then once I got to chapter 7, chapter 8, it just became very repetitive to me. And that, to me, it really brings this game down. What I would love to see, personally, is Compulsion Games get another crack at it. Because I really think this is a studio that has the talent to really make a banger. So overall, how do I feel about South of Midnight? Overall, the way I feel about South of Midnight is that for it's an okay game. It's not a great game because of the core combat and how it can get very repetitive. The story is amazing. The characters are amazing. The writing is amazing. The voice cast is amazing. Everything else is absolutely amazing. If the gameplay had more depth to it, more to the gameplay, more to what you can do in terms of combat, I would give this game a higher score and I would praise it much more. But in its current state, the way it is and the way it probably will stick is I would look at South of Midnight as a good game for Game Pass, a game to get possibly on sale, but I wouldn't recommend it at full price just because the way the gameplay is. Overall, I'm giving South of Midnight a 6.5 out of 10. This is Veteran Gamer, and I hope to see you guys next time.